Hey everyone, it's triplemangothreat, and today we're talking about the commander decks from Kaldheim, specifically the Foretell deck with Ranar as our commander. This video is going to be all about the Precon upgrades that you can be putting in this deck, and also cards we're going to have to get rid of to be able to put those in. But first, let's talk about our commander, Ranar. Ranar the Ever-Watchful for 2, a blue and a white, is a 2/3 Spirit Warrior with Flying and Vigilance. The first card you foretell each turn costs 0 to foretell. Whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with Flying. And Foretell is going to be feeding right into that. We're going to be exiling cards from our hand, and there's a lot of ways to flicker our creatures and permanents. Let's jump right into it. So the stats of the Foretell deck, we have 10 ramp, 7 draw, 8 removal, and 1 board wipe. So these are the basic things we usually look at. Usually our decks are going to want 10 ramp, 10 card draw, 5 removal, and 3 to 5 board wipes. I understand why they have these stats, because 10 ramp, that's great for blue and white. Now the 7 draw, I think I know why it's so low. There's a lot of ways to flicker or bounce our creatures that have a lot of ETBs and ways to draw, and also there's cards like Vega the Watcher. Whenever we cast a spell from anywhere other than our hand, we're going to be drawing cards, so that means foretelling. And for those who don't know what foretell is, so during our turn we can pay 2 mana to exile it from our hand face down and then cast it later for its foretell cost on a different turn. So usually we want about 30% of our deck to have whatever the theme of this deck is, and to my surprise there were only 9 foretell cards. Yeah, there's not 30 of them or even 20, there's just 9. We have 4 anthems, which means they promote us having a lot of creatures and giving them +1/+1. 8 flicker cards or bounce cards, ways to have our permanents enter the battlefield again. 1 protection card, which means we can protect our commander, and 36 lands. Overall, it's an okay deck. I am really surprised with just cards that I felt like they just threw in there, such as Cloud Goat Ranger for 3 white-whites, a 3/3 giant warrior. When it comes into play or when it enters the battlefield, put 3 1/1 white Kithkin Soldier creature tokens into play. Tap 3 untapped Kithkin you control. Cloud Goat Ranger gets +2/+0 and gains flying until end of turn. Now we're going to be doing a lot of flickering, a lot of ETB stuff, and I see where that would work with this, but we're not Kithkin tribal. This is, every time we're foretelling a card, we get a spirit token, so I don't think that goes along with it at all. Inspired Sphinx for 5 blue. It's a 5/5 Sphinx with flying when it enters the battlefield. We're going to draw cards equal to the number of opponents we have. Well, first of all, we're going to need 7 mana to get this card out, and for 3 and a blue, we can make a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Not a spirit, that was a bummer as well. So we can get some card draw from Inspired Sphinx, but I just feel like there's some better cards we could be having than this one. Storm Herd for 8 white, so 10 mana, it's a sorcery. Create X white Pegasus creature tokens with flying, where X is your life total. Last time I checked, this is not a life gain deck, so we may end up paying 10 mana for 24 life, which that means 24 Pegasus tokens, which I just don't think this belongs in the deck. And another easy one to remove is Whirler Rogue for 2 blue. It's a 2/2 human rogue artificer. When it enters the battlefield, we create 2 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. We can tap 2 untapped artifacts we control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Well, that really doesn't matter when we are a going wide kind of deck, especially from our commander. We're going to be foretelling a lot, exiling a lot of permanents, so we're making a bunch of 1/1 spirit tokens with flying. Maybe I just don't see how good this could be, but Iron Verdict for 2 and a white. It's an instant, and it can deal 5 damage to target tapped creature, and it has foretell for 1 white, so we can cast it later for 1 white. I don't think this is good. I'd rather it be just, hey, you deal 5 damage to whatever, but then that would lead us more towards a red card. But again, this is one I'm going to have to remove. Nico Defies Destiny for 1 white and a blue. It's an enchantment saga, so it has 3 different things it's going to do on each turn. So the first turn we play it, we get to gain 2 life for each foretold card that we own in exile, but remember there's only 9 foretelling cards in this deck, so why do we even want this? And anyways, next turn we'll add a white and a blue. We can spend this mana only on cards we can foretell or cast spells that have foretell. Well, again, it's only 10% of our deck, so yeah, it's just a lot of nonsense. And then the next turn we can return a card with foretell from our graveyard to our hand. This is just not one I'm going to recommend for the deck. Surtland Elementist for 5 blue. It's an 8/8 giant wizard, and as an additional cost to cast that spell, you have to reveal a giant card from your hand or pay 2 more mana. Whenever Surtland Elementalist attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery from your hand without paying its mana cost. Well, this deck is all about foretelling, so we can't foretell cards that are in our hand, because they're going to be on the battlefield exiled. Yeah, I just don't think this is a card to include, and especially if you're going to have to end up paying 9 mana, because what's the likelihood we get another giant in our hand? Not very likely, so that's another one I'm pitching. Warhorn Blast for 4 and a white. It's an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, and it has Foretell for 2 and a white. I think there's enough Anthem effects in the deck without this one, and I just don't think it's very good. I don't want to pay 3 to give my creatures +2/+1. I'd rather have an enchantment that's going to do this every time, or a creature like Gold Knight Commander. When another creature enters the battlefield under our control, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, and since we're going to be hopefully foretelling a lot, our creatures are going to get big really quickly. The last 2 cards I want to remove from this deck are Arcane Artisan and Synthetic Destiny. I just don't think these cards are going to be good for the deck. With Arcane Artisan, it's 2 and a blue for a 0/3 human wizard. We can pay 3 to tap Arcane Artisan. Target player draws a card and then exiles a card from their hand. If a creature card was exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of that card. And when it leaves the battlefield, exile all tokens created with it at the beginning of the next end step. And Synthetic Destiny, we get to exile all creatures we control at the beginning of the next end step. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal that many creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest of the revealed cards into your library. Well, we don't really have any crazy creatures that we have in our deck. Most of it's just, hey, draw a card. Hey, your creatures get +1/+1. I don't think these are the cards that are going to help us win the game. As for the upgrades of the deck, I want to talk about Diluvian Primordial, 5 blue. It's a 5/5 avatar with flying. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery from their graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a card cast this way will be put in the graveyard, exile it instead. This is a great card and repeatable because of that ETB. Imagine doing this to someone's Take an Extra Turn card, or any good instant and sorcery. Next is Felidar Guardian for 3 and a white. It's a 1/4 cat beast. When it enters the battlefield, we may exile another target permanent you control and then return that to the battlefield under its owner's control. So again, this is promoting more ETBs, and it has an ETB on itself. Now, a mean card we have is Nevermaker for 3 and a blue. It's a 2/3 elemental with flying. When Nevermaker leaves play, or when it leaves the battlefield, put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library, and it has Evoke for 3 and a blue. Every time it leaves the battlefield, we can put a permanent on someone's library, and this is really mean because that creature our opponent just cast, well, it's going on your library, and you're going to draw that, and you're going to see that again and again and again, and this can get really annoying. Peregrine Drake for 4 and a blue. It's a 2/3 Drake with flying. When it enters, we get to untap up to 5 lands, and this is really going to help us with casting all of our spells. Another mean one is Reality Acid for 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment aura. We get to enchant permanent, and it has Vanishing 3, and that means this permanent comes into play with 3 time counters on it at the beginning of your upkeep. Remove a time counter from it when the last counter is removed, or sacrifice it. Well, this isn't going to matter because we can just keep flickering it or bouncing it, and when it leaves play, the enchanted permanent's controller has to sacrifice it. This could mean their lands, which is really mean, and I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a possibility. Or we can get rid of those huge threats that they have. Solemn Simulacrum for 4 colorless. It's a 2/2 golem. When it enters, we get to search our library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped, and when it dies, we get to draw a card. But what we're mostly focused on is its ETB, so we get to grab basics from our library onto the battlefield, so we are ramping just by having this card ETB, which is really nice. Stonehorn Dignitary for 3 and a white. It's a 1/4 Rhino Soldier. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent skips his or her next combat phase. If we're able to repeat this every turn, they're not going to be able to kill us with combat damage, which is really nice. Sunblast Angel for 4, white. It's a 4/5 angel with flying. When it enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures. This is going to be another board wipe for the deck, which will be really nice. And we'll only want to have this ETB whenever our creatures are not tapped, obviously. And it's repeatable, which is really nice. Watcher for Tomorrow for 1 and a blue. It's a 2/1 human wizard with Hideaway, and that means when it ETBs, we can look at the top 4 cards of our library, exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. When Watcher of Tomorrow leaves the battlefield, put the exiled card into its owner's hands, and if we can get this to ETB a lot, we're just going to be picking out what we really need. And last for the upgrades, I want to talk about Yorion Sky Nomad for 3, Azorius, or it could be blue, white, just 5 mana. It's a 4/5 bird serpent. It has companion, but most importantly, when it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own and control. Return those to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So Yorion is a repeatable effect as long as it's ETBing. It's pretty much Brago, except we don't have to deal combat damage. It's when it ETBs, which is what the deck really wants to have happen, and I think these upgrades would be really good for the deck. Again, these are all suggestions. You do not have to take these to heart, and also with the cards I'm recommending you remove, it's all suggestion, and I'm sure you probably have better cards you're thinking of right now. But if you have any suggestions, or if you just really like my suggestions, comment down below and let me know what you think. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more Mango content, and look out for that Elves deck coming out soon. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.